Hey, welcome to the latest Humpday Hangout. It is the first Wednesday of the month, actually the first Wednesday of 2018. So we're here talking training. I'm one of your co-hosts, Steve Pegram. I'm the president of the International Society of Fire Service Instructors and fire chief in Goshen, Ohio. And starting in 2018, we've added a few more co-hosts to the group. We thought it'd be good to get a little more perspective, a little more input, and a little more coverage on our monthly training topic. So you'll see a few familiar faces, a couple of newcomers, but everybody has been a co-host in the past or one of our guests. As always, as we get into this Humpday Hangout, if you're watching it live, we would love to hear from you and see if you have any questions. You can reach us by using Twitter with hashtag FETalk. Hashtag FETalk. If you have any questions you'd like to ask the panel over the next hour, we're monitoring that and we'll be sure to try to answer your questions. Left to right across the screen, you'll see my co-host back again, Aaron Heller. Bobby Halton's here with us, Brad French, Joe Pronesti, Tony Carroll, and Steve Shaw. And before we get into our topic and talking to some of our new co-hosts, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Halton real quick. The Fire Department Instructors Conference, FDIC, based on my calculations, is 109 days away. I won't tell you what Bobby said when I reminded him of that, but I'm sure he'll be ready. But Bobby, you want to give us a little bit of an update from Penwell Fire Engineering FDIC as we get into 2018?
Yeah, it's 109 days away. Registration's filling up in a lot of places. Remember, a lot of folks pre-register, so those folks get kind of the first dibs. So some of the hot classes are pretty full already. A couple of the classes that are really going crazy, I'd recommend you really look at them early. The All About Saws class, really popular. The Live Fire Rescue class, really popular. The Flow Path class, really popular. The extrication classes are always tremendously popular. So there's limited space in the hands-on training, and it has sold out the last 4 years in a row, to where we had to squeeze people into several of the classes. So I highly recommend, if you're going to do hands-on training, jump on it now, get in there. Everything's going great. We've got incredible keynoters: Dan DeGrice, Gavin Horn, Ted Nee. So there's going to be some really great keynotes this year. Really incredible stuff. So we're going to have the U.S. FEMA administrator, Brock Long, is going to be joining with us. So that ought to be really fascinating. Talk about the hurricane response and other things that FEMA are doing. So that's really neat that he's going to be spending the day with us. So we're really looking forward to seeing him there and having him available to talk to us, which is really cool. So it's just going great. I know if you have a hotel issue, please don't call me. I can't help you. The hotels are just insane. It's crazy. But Indianapolis is building more hotels, so after I'm gone, you'll have a better situation, which is what everybody says. So every job I've ever been at, after you're gone, things got better. So really, so you got that to look forward to. Other than that, register early. It's great, and thank you to everybody who's coming, and really looking forward to it. A lot of great little things happening around here. I'll be in Phoenix next week at the FDSOA. Really great group of people, the Fire Department Safety Officers. They're doing a little conference down in Phoenix, and so I'll be down there with those good folks. I'll be down with the IAFF at a PPE thing in Florida at the end of the month, and that looks to be really good. I know Captain Ike's got a couple of things coming up to keep your eye on. He always does a great job. Our friend Cody Trustle out there in Oregon's got a great thing coming up supporting the Sons of the Flag. His Firemanship Days out there. That's always a great event. So a lot of really great things happening. We're working with our friends in Texas and our friends in New York to bring a couple of things to you. We're working with our friends in California, so we're going to have a new thing going on out in California. Jeff Seaton's working on some things for us out there and putting together a really good bunch of stuff. So a lot of stuff happening on our end as far as training goes, as always, which is just fantastic. And I can't wait to hear the conversation about everything. So there's all kinds of training issues to talk about, and can't wait to hear what the group has. And thank you particularly to the International Society of Fire Service Instructors. Oh, and Steve, would you remind me? I need to call Lee. You guys do have the the extra pass to give away to one of your members. We give a pass every year to an IFSI member for the conference, and we also select one or two or several IFSI Instructor Society members who are instructors to be first-time presenters. This year, I know Chris Baker is one of them. Do you know the others, Chris? The others, Steve, who are teaching?
I unfortunately don't off the top of my head, but I will look it up before we get done.
So that's another great program. So Steve and Lee and Brad and Devin and all the good folks over at the Instructor Society always help us make that selection. And so if you're an instructor there and you're trying to get into FDIC for 19, that's a great way to learn about it. Come to the meeting this year at FDIC, find out how those guys did it, and get your paperwork in. So a lot of great stuff. Oh, and if you're a member of the society, it's a 10% discount. Remember, if you're a member of the society, basically it pays for itself. If you take a full conference trip to FDIC, it's 10%. So sorry to ramble on. Let's get to the gang, and thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll just mention, as we're getting, hopefully, if you're planning on going to FDIC, you're already booked or well on your way to being booked. There's a few events that happen that week. It's kind of a special week for ISFSI as well as everybody else that attends. Basically, we start and end our year at FDIC. So a lot of our members attend, and that's why we focus our attention on that show. But Tuesday, we do have our annual instructor social. So if you're a member of the society, come on out and enjoy some food and beverages with the board of directors and members of ISFSI. On Thursday, it'll be my honor once again to be on the main stage giving out the Instructor of the Year award. The George D. Post Instructor of the Year is given annually by Penwell and ISFSI, and we'll be making that selection later this week. The process is the sitting president of ISFSI, the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering, and the 3 previous Instructor of the Year winners make that selection. And we've got a lot of really great nominations to review and meet and discuss later this week. And then finally on Friday will be my last day at FDIC as president of ISFSI. I've served on the board about a decade, the last 4 as president. And we have our annual membership meeting. That's our only meeting of the entire membership that's on site somewhere. So we encourage everybody to attend. We do some presentations, some awards, swear in our new board of directors, and serve lunch. So make sure if you're attending FDIC, you come on out for the ISFSI events that we have all week long. With that said, I would like to give each of our panel members an opportunity to just introduce themselves once again. Some of them are back as co-hosts, some are brand new, and so if we could just left to right, each of you introduce yourself, a little bit about your department, and then we'll get into today's topic.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy New Year. My name's Aaron Heller. I'm a captain in Hamilton, New Jersey, just outside of Trenton. I have 30-some years in the fire service, and I've been fortunate to be a co-host with Steve on this Humpday Hangout for quite a while now. And I run a small training company on the side, so I get a chance to travel around, do quite a bit of things. And just to start out, again, I said, the Happy New Year. I'd be remiss if I didn't add, since our last time that we were all together, another FDIC instructor has passed, and it reminds us of some of the issues that we're all facing, and some of the mental health issues and things of that nature that we're all dealing with over the course of our careers. So P.J. Johnson was a hot instructor at FDIC for a while. He presented a maritime firefighting course for land-based firefighters, as P.J. was one of the guys who ran the Portsmouth, New Hampshire harbor, and he was a firefighter in Kittery, Maine. And he died just before Christmas in a motor vehicle accident, and left behind 3 kids and a widow and a whole bunch of great friends and instructors. So just wanted to get that out there, and certainly in our prayers. But I am looking forward to a big year of training for FDIC, for my fire department, and for all my guys. So I couldn't tell you how excited I am about this year. It's going to be great. Thank you,
Awesome.
Steve.
Awesome. Brad?
Yeah, Chief. Brad French. I'm a lieutenant in Dayton, Ohio, currently assigned to our training division. I've been fortunate enough to be part of these fire engineering Humpday Hangouts for the past couple of years or so. As a co-host, I kind of had a lot going on the latter part of last year, and so I missed a few. But I'm happy to be back in the saddle here, hanging out with all you guys again. And also on the topic of FDIC, extremely thrilled and honored as always to have the opportunity to come back and present at FDIC again for 2018, doing my course to company officer as an instructor once again. And so couldn't be happier about that, and looking forward to chatting with everybody about 2018 training priorities.
Awesome. Steve?
Steve Shaw. Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you there, Chief. Hi there, Steve Shaw, Battalion Chief of Training Special Operations for Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue. Been there for a little over 18 years. I got 22 years of fire service total. This is my first time as being a part of this group, and I'm once again just floored and ecstatic to be with you all doing this. Training is one of my passions. I love what my job as the training chief for Lauderdale. Do have the honor of doing also is I'm the training chair for Broward County, the Association of Fire Chiefs for the training group. And I get to interact with all the training, from the largest departments to the smallest. And I found that I've learned so much from every department we've interacted with, from the one station departments to the largest department. And just being with you guys right here, I'm just anxious to pick your brains and learn and be part of this, and looking forward to this year to come. So thank you all for including me in this. I'm honored.
Awesome. Joe, are you able to hear us now?
Yeah, how about now? Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
All right, perfect. I'm Joe Pronesti. I'm with the City of Elyria, Ohio Fire Department in Northern Ohio, just west of Cleveland. We serve about 60,000 residents, 3 stations. I'm a shift commander, assistant chief, been on about 30 years, and I'm honored to be here. I've instructed at FDIC and written for fire engineering, and looking forward to being on this panel now today and in the future. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Tony. You're muted, Tony.
Yeah, I had to find my button. Tony Carroll here. I'm with the District of Columbia Fire Department, Battalion Fire Chief there. I have 6 engines, 3 trucks under my command. That's pretty cool. I've just been doing that for a couple months. I'm also a life member with a local volunteer fire department here in Virginia, where I've been there since I was 15, so that's a few years. Gets me 30-some years in the fire service. Training has always been a passion. With that, I joined ISFSI. I'm the Eastern Region Director, one of the Eastern Region Directors with Brad, and that's been great. Steve has been a real mentor there with the ISFSI. I think he's done great things as the president. This year, I can't wait to see what we do with the basement fire stuff that came out. That should be a real good boon to the fire service to talk about basement fires and how dangerous they are, and perhaps give people some ideas on how to make it safer. So I'm excited. This panel should be pretty fun. I've been on a couple times, but it'd be great to be a regular occurrence.
Awesome. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. And as we get into 2018, we'll be looking to this panel to give us ideas and suggestions for topics. But we'd also like to hear from you. So if there's something you'd like to talk to us about, if you'd like to be a guest, reach out to us. And again, if you're watching live today and would like to ask the panel a question while we're live, hashtag FETalk at Twitter. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, as Tony just mentioned, the ISFSI is midstream in a major training project, if you will, funded by the AFG grant program. We partnered with UL and did a study last year of basement fires, and we actually built a structure, a house with a basement, and furnished it, and did several scientific burns. That work continues in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. We really appreciate that organization and their sponsorship of the helping out with the grant. And we're at the point now where we're in curriculum development. We're working on the final touches on an actual training program that ISFSI will deliver for free across the country in 2018. So as Tony mentioned, those of us that have been involved in that process, it was a neat process to be involved in. Always great to work with the people at UL, Steve Kerber, Dan Majikowski, Robin, and the rest of the gang. And I think that for me, probably the most important part of the process, and I think what people will get out of that program, is we reached out to specifically fire chiefs and departments that had suffered a line of duty death involving a basement fire. And we asked those people when we started the process and we had our first meeting, we asked each of them just to stand up for about 5 minutes and talk about their incident and talk about the people that they lost. So we all had that perspective and that understanding, and always remembered why we were doing it and what we were trying to accomplish by educating and training people on firefighting, specifically tactics involving basement fires. So I just wanted to mention that a little bit more. And as we get into 2018, please watch for ISFSI's announcement of those training programs, videos, and curriculum that will be delivered, again, for free in 2018. Bobby had asked me a few minutes ago who our scholarship winners were. ISFSI and Penwell did partner this year for the first time. Kind of a neat idea of how do we get new up-and-coming instructors to FDIC teaching for the first time. So we asked people that had applied for the first time to be an instructor, that were also members of the society, to reach out to us, identify themselves, and we put a panel of people together to review those applications. And I do have the list of those scholarship winners. So these people are members of ISFSI that will be teaching at FDIC 2018 for the first time. Plus, we're going to have a host of different events for them to attend, and each of them will be assigned an instructor mentor for the week as well, just to kind of help them through the process. I really want to mention this, and I hope that you would write these names down, because I think it's important for these first-time instructors to pack the room. Make sure that they have a good audience of people and they get some good feedback as first-time instructors. So the scholarship winners for 2018 are Ed Collette from Ohio, Sean Egan from New York, and Ben Martin from Virginia. So congratulations to Ed, Sean, and Ben. And they've already been notified and are set and ready to go. They have 109 days to have a flawless presentation ready for us. And I would encourage everybody that's watching to hit their classroom sessions and check out those new first-time instructors. And again, thank you to Penwell for helping sponsor that event for the week. Our topic for today goes right along with the new year. It's 2018, and I wanted each of the panel members to kind of chime in a little bit and talk about what their 2018 priority are for training. Is there something new on the horizon? Did something happen in 2017 that's changing your priorities? Just a roundtable discussion about anything and everything training 2018. And to kick that off, I thought I would just mention sort of my philosophy where I work every day in Goshen, Ohio. Is we're a smaller combination fire department, 2 stations, about 50, 55 employees. And we have focused our attention for the last couple of years, and we plan to do this in 2018, on just being the best engine company we can. There's a lot of fire departments out there, and I've got a lot of friends in the fire service that work places where they try to focus on a lot of different things, and in larger countywide or municipal fire departments, city departments, that may be necessary. But our focus as a smaller department that relies on automatic aid, basically on any structural fire and any type of technical rescue, is to make sure that we are proficient at the basic level of service. We're basically an engine company. We also provide ALS transport. So our priorities are making sure that our firefighter paramedics are proficient in their EMS skills and protocol. And we're spending a lot of time on that in training in the first quarter of 2018. We utilize the cold weather when we don't want to be outside flowing water as much to get all those skills and paramedic refreshers and all that type of stuff done, protocol review. And then the other thing is being a good engine company. And when I say an engine company, we do have a tender, because we have a part of our district does not have fire hydrants, and we do carry rescue tools for auto extrication on all our engines. But we don't have a truck. We don't have a heavy rescue. We don't do swift water. We're not a hazmat team. We're not a rescue technician team, and we don't plan on doing any of those. what we're going to do is we're going to focus on EMS. We're going to focus on being a good engine company, doing auto extrication, and then we'll just keep repeating those skills and abilities all year long. And I think a big focus of that, and we've talked about it before on this Hump Day Hangout multiple times, is yes, we do lecture. Yes, we do classroom. Yes, we do some online learning. But the most important thing is getting outside and flowing water, getting outside and drafting, getting outside and throwing ladders and stretching lines. And we do everything from utilizing our firehouse as a prop to we're still blessed to be able to do some acquired structures occasionally. We also borrow a live fire training trailer that I know Aaron and a few others have some experience with doing training with the portable live fire training trailers. And then we're really blessed now that our neighboring department, Lovell and Sims, built a burn building and tower last year. So we now have that access that our on-duty crews can go down there and do live fire training with our mutual aid partners. So when I talk about 2018 in Goshen, Ohio, that's our focus. That's what we're going to stay true to. And our goal is to be proficient in those things. And then we also identify and know who to call for the other stuff. And we've got great mutual aid partners around us, and we've got a system in place that calls them automatically. I don't have to request them. If I get dispatched right now to a train into a car, there's a mechanism to send the right and appropriate response for that, whether it be from Goshen or our neighboring departments. So from a fire chief in the town of Goshen, Ohio, that's sort of what we're doing. And then I will pass the baton. I'd like to pass it to Brad. One, to put you on the spot because we've missed you a few times in the last couple of months. But two, Brad had a unique challenge in 2017 when he came off an engine company, being a company officer where he excelled, and going to the training division. So a little bit of a different assignment, and not always what Brad teaches and talks about. Usually he gives us the training from the company officer perspective. Brad, now that you've settled into the instructor role at the Dayton Fire Department, I wonder if you could chime in on that a little bit for 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that is a priority for us and is emerging as a priority for us, and it's partly because I came into training not too long ago, and there's also some other faces, some new exciting new blood in our training division that are really interested in incorporating some information on line of duty deaths, and it kind of popped in my head a little bit ago when it was mentioned during the discussion about the basement fires and the development of all that curriculum that we reached out to departments that were involved in basement fires, and there's so much to be learned from those previous incidents. And despite a lot of what's discussed frequently on social media these days about line of duty deaths and the truth behind the numbers and all that kind of stuff, and that's absolutely accurate and worthy discussion to making sure we're focusing our priorities on what's really killing firefighters. I don't disagree at all, but there are always going to be situations where firefighters are dying in traumatic ways in fires, and we've got to continue to focus to have an active focused training program on those. And so anyway, the reason that I kind of go off on that tangent is we really like to incorporate NIOSH reports, line of duty death case studies into our training, into our weekly drills that we send out to our organization, as well as incorporate them into we did a comprehensive high-rise training where we looked at a bunch of different case studies, certainly looked at a bunch of different line of duty death case studies when we did some fire dynamics. One of our priorities for this upcoming year is hopefully, knock on wood, replacement of our fire behavior container, flashover can, if you will. And certainly we'll look towards a lot of fire dynamics related case studies when we roll that out as well. So anyways, that's not necessarily a specific training priority, but in general, one of the things that we're trying to do a better job of as an organization is to really keep an eye on what's going on with those NIOSH reports for traumatic events as they're released, incorporate those into our training programs however we can, whether that be simple things that we can kick out on our online learning management system, or whether it be things that we incorporate into the classroom setting or the drill ground setting. I know that's kind of not an innovative concept by any stretch of the imagination, but it becomes no less important as the years go by. Regardless of the trend of different patterns of line of duty deaths, it's still really important to focus heavily on the traumatic ones that do occur. So anyway, that's one of my training priorities for 2018, to continue that. We're also looking at some RIT training. We had a pretty tough fire downtown last week in a Type 3 ordinary early 1900s building, and a lot of fire extension issues and multiple rapid intervention teams at different entry points and things like that. So we're going to also put a renewed focus on some back to the basics rapid intervention team training this year. So just some of the stuff from my area.
So Brad, how have you adjusted to days?
I don't know how people get a haircut or go to the bank and all that kind of stuff that I would do when I was on 24s, right? I mean, when do you find time to do all that other normal stuff when you're on days? But I've kind of gotten used to it. And actually, come next week, I'm actually going to roll shift again yet one more time, and I'm going to be the lead instructor for our next 6-month new fire recruit academy. So I'm still going to be on 40s. For the first half of this year, but I'm going to be focused on doing some recruit training for the next 6 months. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Great opportunity. Thanks, Brad. Joe Pronesti, talk to us about training in 2018.
Well, I think I can speak for a lot of fire departments in the fact that in January, when January hits, everybody's full of spit and vinegar, and they want to train, and you start out with good intentions, and then the snow melts, and the chief says, "Oh, we got to do hydrants, or you got to do inspections."
Guilty.
Or, man, I'm going on vacation, and I'd like to maybe just suggest to company officers or shift commanders or whatever, is to focus in on just the small things. Don't eat take a little piece at a time of the elephant, and don't try to create a big giant program, because I guarantee you won't succeed, especially a smaller department, which is most of the U.S. So for me anyway, I pick one item, and we do try to focus in on that, at least on my shift and on my department. And you just have to stay the course and try to plan out. And then whatever you do, you have to make sure that takes priority throughout the year. And that to me is important. As far as the subject matter for 2018, I'd like to see a little bit renewed effort on as far as firefighting. I don't want to just always say basics, but residential house fires and stretching lines, and it's the same thing. But I think for the last few years, a lot of departments got into the fire behavior, the UL, planning their training agendas around those awesome studies, and they forgot to tell the young guy what to do when he's driving a pumper for the first time and he pulls up in front of a working fire in a 2.5-story wood frame. And so those little things need to come back full circle. I'm a very traditionalist type of firefighter instructor, and feel like we can never get away from those particular items of building construction and fire attack in the building. And so that's just my little 2 cents for 2018.
Awesome. Aaron, what's going on in New Jersey?
Well, after we thaw out, I guess we'll get moving. But now, for us, it's we're in flux. Where I work, we're getting ready to go through a consolidation. We've been talking about it for years. The new politicians are in and swear they're going to do it this time, and I tend to believe this group, as far as you can believe politicians. But we've started having a lot of turnover. So one of the problems that we haven't addressed in the last really 18 months or so since this turnover started was, we do a lot of things and guys get assigned to companies and are expected to be able to pick up the pace right away. And I think one of the problems we've had is we've overlooked that we have guys that have 35 years on the job and guys with 3 weeks on the job. And we go to runs, and I don't know that our expectations are realistic. So that's one of the priorities for me, especially in my house, is that we get these guys, the younger group, brought up to a higher level that we expect them to be at, but that we feed them what's necessary, and we don't just think they're going to get these powers by sitting in the chair next to the smart guy. So we're going to work a lot more on that. We've got to get a lot of these younger guys up to speed in some of our special ops stuff because they're going into special ops companies right away. It's not the optimum way of doing it, but it's how our system works probably for the next 12 months or so until we change. So we need to work on that. One of the things is we trained everybody in SOC in man versus machine. We brought PL Vulcan in 5 or 6 years ago, and Mark and Patty Nichols and the boys did a great job for us. And we've had some incidents. And now with these young guys, we're starting to look at little things that our older guys have had and we haven't brought to them yet. So, and we want to get some documentation that they've been trained to these levels. So we're going to work on that. In my house, we're going to work on being a good engine company because that's our first priority. We're an engine company for a big section of an area, and we're a rapid intervention for a big section of an area. So those are going to be two of the things that we harp on the hardest. And again, you know, we're not curing cancer here, but if we can just know how to get our lines in place and do it the right way, a lot of the other problems are certainly going to go away, as Andy taught us years ago. And it's still true in 2018, and it's still true with millennials getting on my rig now. It's a big difference. I lost a 36-year chauffeur a couple days ago. So now a guy with 10 years is going to be the main chauffeur on that platoon. So these are the things that we're going to look at. As much as it's back to basics, as you hate to say it, it's doing your job and doing it right. And we're going to hammer the guys at that. And they've been good, but there's always room to be better. And same thing with our officers. We've got a lot of officer development because now we're starting to get some retirees and some young guys moving up the ranks, and they're sharp. They're very sharp guys, but they don't have the experience yet. So we need to get them as ingrained as we possibly can into how we expect it done. So that's my thing. And you know, on a personal note, just keeping myself where I think I should be, and for the guys, and for me, that's on a physical level. It's getting in better shape. It's not becoming one of the 93 from last year that, you know, are on the rolls. And you know, it's the gym and it's the diet. And I'll throw this out there. Our dear friend and Bobby's very dear friend and mine, Sue Shepard, and I talked several times in the last week, and she's the IFD peer fitness coordinator through the IAFF, and one of the finest people I've ever met in the fire service. And I said, Sue, help me get a schedule together. I'm 48 years old and I got to be in better shape for my guys. So she and I are going to be working on that here in the next few weeks. So
and she runs the fun run at FDIC, so don't forget to sign up for the fun run.
Absolutely.
Aaron,
she runs the fun run, and
Bradley,
she
Steven.
looks out for us. She looks out for us.
I do it every year.
Me too. Old and fat, I still do it. So anyway,
not very quickly, but I do it.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, that's my soapbox. Sorry to take up so much time, but that's where we are in Hamilton, and I hope to report in a few months that we actually have a course of action where they're going to take us. So it's exciting, and for a guy with close to 30 years on that job, a little scary, but it's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that comes about. Obviously, being from that neck of the woods, been watching and hearing about that for a long time, and I would agree with you, Aaron. I don't think it's ever seemed like it's any closer than it does now. So good luck with that.
Thanks.
Steve, Tony, you want to chime in?
Sure. We're big department, real big department. So we have a lot of pressures that are competing. Call volume is up. You know, we're up. Our full-time population is growing. So there's lots of demands, and that can be tough. When I come in and I want to do a drill with my company or my battalion, but it's already been set that they're going to go to EMT training or medical training. There's 7 or 8 companies out a day for medical training. So then we have to figure in how can we get other stuff. The academy, our training academy is pushing out some firefighter initiatives, but it's really on a 1 company a day level. We've got 60, 50 some companies a day. So we want to get everybody trained right now, but it's going to be an impossibility. So training for me, I'm trying to get them to think about firefighting, keep fire in their life, if you will, and hopefully I can do that by you're rolling out some of these LODD reports and saying, look at this, guys. Yes, it was a small job in Ohio, like the most recent one, but there's something we can take from that. That last one was a basement fire, lightweight construction. We're getting the lightweight construction with those same pressures and things that we're finding here. So we can get something from that. Along those lines, though, we want to try and get the basement fire stuff that we just put out in ISFSI, get that to our guys. How can we do that? The job also is changing our SOGs. So initially, for the next 2 months, we're going to be going SOG module at 4 hours a day for our guys. The problem is that the SOG training is probably a 16-hour class that we're going to try and jam in 4 hours. So I can see where that's going to take up, again, that's going to take up the next couple of months, but then trying to implement it and do it and get guys comfortable with it may take more time. So it's going to be tough. But we're firefighters, right? We always find a way. And with 24 hours, we have a long day that we can definitely jam some stuff in there with them. The guys, we can see where they're starving for really good stuff. They love it. As much as with holidays, you're supposed to give them a day off for training, but the guys really like it. And I think that we're finding that training is really important to the guys too.
I totally agree with you, Tony, and I was really hoping you were going to answer the phone there because I thought that would have been interesting. Before we go to Steve, you mentioned something that just popped into my brain and something I just read the other day, but call volume. And just by a show of hands or maybe a nod of the head, are we all experiencing an increase in call volume? Because it seems like we are. And I think all of us, it's being driven by EMS, but we're also seeing, I know locally, more and more of the emergency type calls, the odors, the water problems, the utility problems, things like that. And obviously being the end of the year, beginning of the year, I've just been sitting there crunching numbers, and our call volume went up about 8.5% last year. And just interesting that trend continues, where the fire service is more and more continues to be relied on for a lot more than just fires or taking somebody to the hospital. With that said, I did see an article the other day about San Diego. And San Diego, I don't know if any of you guys saw this, is getting ready to put additional engine companies in service that are not going to be stationed at any specific firehouse. So basically, they're going to staff up and add additional engines that will float around the city, both to cover high call volume, but in the article I read, for example, will allow them, like Tony talked about, a big department, it's very hard to schedule training and give guys an interruption from the day-to-day to do training. And so these companies are going to go into an area and allow those companies to go out of service for a period of time so that they can accomplish good quality hands-on training. Anybody else on the panel seen that, doing that, experienced that kind of operation? No, I thought it was pretty cool, but obviously expensive.
Well, we used to do that routinely in Albuquerque when we would have, we would do, like district-wide drill or district-wide training. So you'd pull a whole district, basically, just like a first alarm. Basically, if you had 5 districts or 6 districts, you'd pull a district out, and then you do coverage with units. But we never did. San Diego's kind of taking a little bit of a different twist on it. We used to backfill, right? 1 or 2 companies would relocate into other houses. It sounds like they're doing almost a hybrid system status management along with the relocation deal. Because I think most metro departments have done, relocation to cover training, since the dawn of time. But I think they've taken kind of an interesting data-driven approach to it as well, which is just pretty cool. I mean, Hennessy does an incredible job running that organization. He's a brilliant guy, and who wouldn't want to be in San Diego? Duh. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. So kind of a neat deal. There's a couple of articles on it on Fire Engineering, Firefighter Nation. I know Bill Carey will throw up a tweet to it real quick and get that out there so everybody can take a look at that, what Steve's talking about while we're discussing it. But that was a neat piece of work that they did there. Also, it'd be well worth to mention that NIOSH report that came up earlier had some neat overlappings with the conversation, because it was a fatality that occurred in a basement. It was an interesting discussion to be had there. And just a real quick question that came to mind, I don't want to lose the thought. It was actually what we would call a cellar back east. If you can walk out of a basement in the East Coast, we call that a cellar. And they'll sometimes have a man door, or this one had a Bilco door. And Bilco is just a trade name for doors that open up on these gigantic hinges. They're predominantly made by the Bilco Door Company. I think this one was more a Bilco door. But so there's a lot of interesting discussion about that particular fire. Interesting report. A lot of conversation we could have there. But neat idea that Steve brought up about relocating units in order to facilitate training. I'd like to hear what everybody has to say about it.
I'll chime in just real briefly, kind of on both of those things, on what Chief Halton was just saying about that report, and not to get too far into that, but I really hope everybody reads that report from Hamilton, Ohio. But anyway, one of the other notable things with that as he relates to the Bilco doors, I believe, I don't want to say with 100% certainty, but I believe that was the only access to that portion of the main body of fire was on that Charlie side Bilco, that there really wasn't any way to get to them, to the fire from the interior, which is a notable point in the discussion about that incident as well. But anyway, the other thing, not to change gears off of something so important, but getting back to the relocation of companies and things like that, one of the things that we've tossed around the idea of doing, and have done it to a lesser degree, but without maybe a little short of full implementation, is doing a better job of taking our training division on the road. And I guess I'd be speaking to all the training officers out there that are in situations where training isn't absorbed by somebody that's on shift or something like that, but departments that are of the size to have a dedicated training division, don't hesitate, or barring any logistical challenges, obviously, taking that show on the road, take it out to the members. It doesn't displace them to have to show up at the training center or training facility or whatever. If you can take your show on the road with a little PowerPoint and some hands-on stuff and show up and conduct training on sites at the companies, having certain geographically located stations get together and deliver it to them on site there. I think sometimes in the fire service we get into this, and maybe especially in larger departments, get into this groove of, well, if we're doing training, they've got to come to us. Well, that shouldn't always be the case, right? We should be flexible in the training division to take our show on the road, unless it's something that needs to physically occur at the training facility, at the building, which certainly happens from time to time, obviously. But I would just encourage folks out there to explore ways to take your training division on the road. It makes it less impactful to the members in the district, on the street, and can be just as effective.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Steve Shaw.
Yes, sir.
The newest of the new. In Florida.
It's really rough out here. Right now we're dealing with very cold 50-degree temperatures outside, and I'm not sure if we're going to stop running calls or just I don't know. It's crazy out there. You mentioned it before. Call volume for some of the larger departments like myself has always been an issue, and the balance, trying to balance everything we have to do with the amount of calls we're running, because that's our primary focus, is just always daunting. In Fort Lauderdale, we have 11 stations. We have 12 engine companies, 16 medical rescues, 3 aerials, a technical rescue team, hazmat, SWAT medics, dive team, a new fireboat. We run EMS. We do it all. And every one of those disciplines requires training, both initial and ongoing. So trying to balance it all is for me, that's the biggest challenge. On a day-to-day basis, I am looking at that calendar, trying to figure out how to get the most bang out of the buck, the best return on investment. And I work within those confines as best I can. But for this year, 2018, and for the last few years, my focus since I got here as the training chief has been hands-on training, solid hands-on training, relevant, practical hands-on training. Some days I don't. Sometimes other things take priority. Sometimes I don't. I get out there and do with the guys. It's hit or miss sometimes. This year, for example, one of our biggest focuses is going to be on high-rise training. Everything to do with high-rise training, because In our downtown area, it's blowing up. There's cranes everywhere. There's high-rise going up left and right. So it behooves us to really focus on our high-rise procedures. Everything from laying lines to elevator operations to incident command, the whole 9 yards. And I'm trying to schedule that into the system right now between day drills, night drills, on the weekends, whenever I can get it done. But along with that, it's, there's everything else out there. A lot of people have talked about officer development training. It seems like everybody I speak with down here, that's like the big ticket item. One of my deputy chiefs, I asked him earlier this year, what should I focus on? Officer development. When I go to the training meetings, officer development. So trying to figure out a way to get that in as well. What we're trying to do is we're also trying to do a lot of acquired structure training. We're very prideful of our acquired structure training down here. We love getting a hold of buildings and utilize them as best as possible. We've got a couple right now. They're going to be up for like 6 months to a year. So for us, since we don't have a dedicated training facility, and it seems like that's like the Band-Aid over every 6 months to a year. We get this big structure, whether it's a warehouse, an old fire station, a building, a high-rise, and we use the crap out of it until it can't be used anymore. And then when it gets demolished, we play along with that as well, and I search for the other one. So one of the things that we're trying to do is, at least for me, overall, I always try to build infrastructure. And what I mean by that is, as I mentioned before, we don't have a training facility. So I'm always trying to find ways to work with the other departments to build one of those. And that's an ongoing project. I'm trying to increase staffing and justify the increase for staffing. Not just beg and plead, but show my boss the number and the data and the comparison charts and justify it rather than just, screaming and yelling to get the needs. To me, last month was, what's your thoughts on hands-on versus online training? Online training is great. It has its place. Only behind a solid core of hands-on training. All the online stuff should be supportive of that. But one of the things we're trying to do to support the online training and support the hands-on training is, like, right now we're developing a series of videos that show the company officers of the station not only what we're showing the rookies through our classes, because some of them haven't been out to see our rookies in years, but also to demonstrate what we consider best practices that we require of our guys to go through the year. For example, this month is on ground ladders. So the video we produced showed them, everything from high shoulder carry to low shoulder carry, but everything we're teaching the rookies, along with what we think is the best out there. So we've always got our plates full. We never can catch up. And again, my goal is just to make sure we get as much training out there as possible. But it's a day-to-day battle trying to make sure I can just squeeze every ounce of training out of that busy schedule, along with running the calls, along with the last-minute emergencies. And it's a daunting experience every single day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. And once again, your passion comes out when you're talking training. And I think we all know why you're sitting here on the panel with us. Bobby, I wanted to ask you from a magazine perspective and also from FDIC, are you seeing any trends in what people are writing about or the topics that people want to teach that maybe fall in line with what we've talked about today, or maybe something new on the horizon?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always trends and ebbs and flows with the fire service in terms of topics that are generating interest. But whether it's mental health, cancer, now industrial hygiene is a huge issue because it ties in with the cancer issue. Whether it's to this conversation, whether it's the basic fundamentals, Andy Fredericks was a guy, Joe Silva before him, back in the day. Before him, it was his name slips me right now, but we've always had people who've been the champions of, as Steve was just talking about, that basic hands-on, and Aaron was talking about hand-line movement. The basics are never going to go away, right? So your calendar is always going to have a balanced combination of the fundamentals, which need to be drilled on continuously, whether it's ladders, hoses, access, size up. All that stuff needs to be done continuously, diligently, monthly, right? And then you've got the development for everybody, for the professional development, whether it's the firefighter, the company officer, the chief officer, inspections bureau, and then there's buildings and building systems, which I know Joe does great work on, right? We need to be better equipped at knowing how high-vac systems work, how standpipe sprinkler systems work, especially combination systems, right? What the outside stem and yoke does, what the PIV does. how to handle these systems. That's another piece of the training that needs to be there continuously. So the trends we're really seeing, the big trends right now, are obviously building awareness. The other big trend right now, it's kind of a back to the future on handline movement and some of the nuances that Andy brought. Aaron Fields obviously doing a great job. But in a lot of the regional shows that we support widely, with people like, I mentioned earlier, Kirk Isaacson or Cody Trestle, or the folks out in Harrisburg, or our good friends all around the country who are doing some great hands-on training. It's that basic fundamental stuff that, unfortunately, because the jobs are so busy today, whether you're a 50-person job like Goshen, or a 60-person job like Goshen, or a 1,000-person job like Albuquerque, or a 14,000-person job like the FDNY, the call volume and the intensity of the work today has the troops going at such a level that getting that company drill in there is hit and miss, which is why the folks on this particular call and the folks who run training are so integral, right? We've got to, I love what, Brad said earlier about taking the training to the road. We need to be looking at training after hours, right? Evening training. The San Diego folks are brilliant because they're doing system status management along with their training. So they're looking at peak hours and when they can move people. That's the kind of thinking that we really need to embrace as a society of instructors so that we can share those incredibly broad lessons. Joe and Chris Naum put together some incredible presentations and stuff that they put up. Joe puts his stuff up on Fire Engineering. You can download it. Joe can come online with you. Use platforms like Google. Use platforms like there's all kinds of platforms out there that we can generate stuff together on. But the big trends right now that we're seeing are again, and it's hysterical. I sent a good friend of mine, Steve Kerber, and out in old timers. I'm sorry. This happens to guys my age. We forget stuff. Dennis Laguerre. So we're looking at hose again, right? And flow. And so I sent him a PowerPoint that I did in 94, 95, that looked at hose diameter, that looked at, rubber jacketed, rubber line, cotton jacketed, it looked at extruded, and it looked at degradation issues, whether it was, UV, UL, whether, UV light, whether it was extrusion, whether, for the extruded hose, whether it was delamination for the hoses that were glued. So we constantly need to be looking at these things, right? Because people don't even know how to do, flow rates. They think that the pump panel says, 110, and then they do some goofy math, and they say, oh, well, my friction loss is, 25, so that my tip pressure is 50. If you believe that, I got some swampland outside of Aaron's place, by the Meadowlands to sell you. That ain't real. That's fantasy. And what Brad said and what Steve said and what Tony said is so important. You need to get pressure gauges, get out to the rigs, you need to get a pedo, you need to learn how the pump works, you need to get underneath it, you need to take stuff apart, you need to play with it, you need to get your hands dirty, you need to crawl, you need to feel it, you need to breathe it, you need to roll around in it like a dog in the mud. And if you're not willing to do that, man, go back to being a school teacher, because this is our gig, right? True story. I was scraping some shutters. I love to work with my hands. I fixed a blender and an old radio during the holidays. It was a blast, man. But so anyway, I was scraping some shutters this summer, and a kid who wants to become a firefighter came by the house, and so I'm scraping and sanding, and he says, "Hey, can I talk to you about becoming a firefighter?" I said, "Sure, kid." I said, "Grab a sander." He goes, "Oh, I don't really like to do work with my hands." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll come back later." I'm going to talk to the kid again. If you don't like to work with your hands, get another job. If the only thing that works is your mouth, we got enough of that already. So I love what you're doing, and it's got to be that combination, right? It's got to be that combination. You got to engage here, and here. It's got to be physical, it's got to be emotional, and it's got to be cognitive, man. We're talking a lot about these reports, and these reports are cool, but they only tell you the who's. We get very little first account person stuff where people tell us why, what were they thinking, what were they trying to accomplish. If you only focus on the who and blame, you ain't going to learn anything, because you can't blame and learn at the same time. It's impossible. And a lot of those reports just blame. They don't help us to learn. So some cool stuff going on. Use everything, use everybody. But the big trends right now, I would say, solid didactic training that focuses on learning the fundamentals and then taking it to industrial hygiene. I think that's where we're going to be seeing a lot of that. And in January, I threw out a thing about virtue signaling. In other words, we all complain about dirty gear, but how many organizations have really sat down, and this is a training issue, has sat down with their chiefs and said, and everywhere I see it, they blame the individual firefighters for having dirty gear. Well, it ain't their freaking problem. It's the organization's problem. So if you're a boss, you wash the dang gear, not the firefighters. Get off your happy, fat tushy and get some machines and put together a program and wash the freaking gear or shut up. Sorry.
If I had a mic, I would drop it for you.
944, man. 944 to dark 30.
So, Chief, you brought up talking to Dennis Laguerre, and I made the mistake of once of asking him a hose question, and 4.5 hours later, I got the completed answer. But he's a great resource and very knowledgeable and passionate person.
That's the gouge, man. You got to want the gouge, right? If all you want to know is who made it or what kind it is, get off the bus, dude. You gotta know how it was made, why it was made that way, and not all hoses created equal, and not all hoses meant for every job either. It's just like nozzles, it's like pipe pulls, it's like every other tool we have. If all you've got is one tool or one type of nozzle, or you might as well just have one 14-foot pipe pull. Let me see. Tell me how that works out for you. Or just get one hydraulic tool. Yeah, one hydraulic tool will do it all. If you're that simplistic, God bless you.
Thank you, Chief.
Sorry.
I always
better mute myself.
Brad French, I know you had your hand up in the background there. Did you have something you wanted to add to us before we're almost at the top of the hour already?
No, after all that from Chief Holden, I think I want to just shut up.
Okay.
But no, the only thing I was going to add, somebody did mention a lot about officer development and how important that is. The last little blip that I wanted to throw out was keep in mind that if you're in a situation where you're strained on hours or budget or whatever in your training division, you've got to focus some effort somewhere, but you've got to cut some other priorities. Focus on officer development, because just like in economics, right, trickle-down economics and things like that in politics, well, it's the trickle-down effect of focusing on your company officers. If you invest time and money and effort into company officer development, you're going to get them into a better position to conduct that company officer training, or excuse me, that company level training, to want to be doing those things at the station level with their folks and do a good job. So invest in the officer training, and it's going to have a trickle down effect throughout the rest of your organization.
Very good. Believe it or not, we're at the top of the hour, which I think is a good thing. It shows that the panel that we've put together for 2018 is excited, has a lot of great ideas, is passionate about training, and I think that's why we're here. I did take a few notes, and I just wanted to mention and summarize before we wrap the hour what we talked about today, and that is being proficient. Make sure that the people that work for you know their job and know the basics. I think many of us mentioned incorporating NIOSH and other line of duty death type reports or injury reports into our drills and training. Give it a piece of perspective, some reality to why we're drilling on what we're drilling, relate it back to an actual incident. Several of us mentioned focusing on basic engine company operations, making sure that the driver knows how to drive the truck, shift it into pump, get water. When's the last time we challenged that pump operator and had somebody run around the truck shutting valves on them or opening valves and doing the things that were done to us 25 years ago to make us a proficient driver engineer, flowing nozzles, flowing lines, checking your flow and making sure what you think you're flowing and what you're really flowing match. Preparing for turnover and change. I know Aaron talked about, a lot of change going on in his organization, mergers, retirements, a lot of new hires, promotions, all that going on in the organization. A lot of talk about acting officers, acting company officers, acting battalion chiefs. And some of that went back to some NIOSH reports recently that have listed that as a contributing factor. Calls are up. All of us were saying, calls are up. For some of us, working fires are even up. We definitely saw that trend in my area a few years ago where we had a spike in working fires. It's leveled off a little bit, but a lot of areas of the country, especially the suburbs, are seeing a spike in working fires, as a lot of the suburbs many of us work in are now 25, 30 years old. So it's not the brand new construction anymore. It's a house, it's a building that's been lived in by maybe 2 or 3 families, and there's wear and tear on the facilities and on the building. We're starting to see an uptick in structural fires, especially residential structure fires. Finding the balance. How do you balance your call volume, your inspections, your hydrants, and also get the training done that we need to do? Heard it from almost everybody, hands-on, hands-on, hands-on. Make sure people are getting out on the street and doing hands-on training. And then Joe mentioned within our little chat group, training is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not about just getting it done quickly and checking the box. It's, all year long, all day long, all shift long, career long, we need to be focused on the training. So before I completely wrap up, anybody have a final word before I check out for this Hump Day Hangout? Hearing none, FDIC is in 109 days, and this panel will be back for our next Hump Day Hangout focused on training on Wednesday, February 7th at 1 o'clock. I hope you can join us then. Until then, be safe and keep training.
Sorry about the rant.